It is January 7th, 2026, and the world feels different. While most people are distracted by the political echoes of yesterday's anniversary in Washington, a far more lethal execution is taking place in the global financial markets. You've seen the signs at your local gas station, prices that seem to change by the hour, defying every logic of supply and demand. But what you're witnessing isn't just a temporary spike or a supply chain glitch. It is the controlled demolition of the world's most powerful currency, the US dollar. For decades, our entire lifestyle was built on a single, unspoken promise that energy would always be cheap and the dollar would always be king. Today, both of those pillars are crumbling simultaneously. This is the forensics of a collapse that was predicted by few, but will be felt by everyone from New York to London. To understand why you might soon be paying $15 for a gallon of gas, you must first understand the secret deal that built the modern world. In 1974, the United States made a pact with the House of Saud. All oil would be traded exclusively in US dollars. This created an artificial, global demand for the greenback, making it the world's undisputed reserve currency. But as we stand here in 2026, that petrodollar system is effectively dead. From the BRICS nations to the shadow markets of South America, countries are now trading oil for gold, yuan, and even Bitcoin. The moment the world no longer needs the dollar to buy energy, the trillions of dollars held overseas will come flooding back to American shores, triggering an inflationary tsunami that will wipe out the savings of the middle class overnight. Now, let's look at the most unlikely winner in this global chess game, Nicolas Maduro. For years, the Western media painted Venezuela as a crumbling socialist ruin, a failed state irrelevant to the global stage. Yet, Venezuela sits on the world's largest proven oil reserves, over 300 billion barrels of heavy crude. While the United States burned through its own shale reserves to maintain a facade of independence, Maduro played the long game. He survived sanctions, coup attempts, and international isolation by building a shadow alliance with China and Russia. Today, as Middle Eastern oil becomes increasingly unstable and expensive, the world is realizing that Caracas holds the master key to the global energy grid. The dictator isn't just surviving anymore, he is dictating the terms of the New World Energy Order. The internal conflict within the United States has reached a boiling point. Donald Trump's recent statements have sent shockwaves through the global markets, as he blames the current administration for begging Maduro for oil. Trump's fury isn't just political theater, it is a reflection of a deeper systemic failure. He knows that the U.S. military-industrial complex was built on energy dominance, and that dominance has evaporated. When Trump warns that the country is becoming a third world nation, he is referring to the fact that we can no longer control the price of the very resource that fuels our military and our economy. This political infighting is the ultimate distraction, preventing the public from seeing that the real war is being fought over the barrels of oil that we can no longer afford to pump. Why is $15 a gallon the magic number? Because that is the point of no return for the American commuter. At $15, the cost of transporting food, medicine, and consumer goods becomes so high that the economy simply grinds to a halt. We are currently seeing unconfirmed pricing at various stations because the market is in a state of pure speculation. The traditional laws of economics have been replaced by the laws of geopolitics. Every time Maduro smiles in a press conference or China signs a new deal in South America, your cost of living goes up. This isn't a mistake, it is a trap. The goal is to force a great reset where the average citizen can no longer afford a private vehicle, pushing the masses toward a digital, controlled, and localized lifestyle. While we focus on oil, China has been quietly executing a secondary maneuver, the silver squeeze. In 2026, silver has become more than just a precious metal. It is the industrial backbone of the green energy transition and the AI revolution. China has effectively cornered the global silver market, creating a supply shortage that is crippling Western tech companies. By controlling both the traditional energy through their alliances with Maduro and the future energy components like silver, Beijing has created a pincer movement against the US dollar. You might wonder what silver has to do with your gas price. The answer is everything. In a world where paper money is losing value, the nations that hold the tangible resources, the oil and the silver, are the ones who will write the rules for the next century. There is a technical secret that the government doesn't want you to know. Most U.S. refineries were not built to process American shale oil. They were built for the heavy crude that comes from Venezuela. For decades, we have been in a bizarre loop of exporting our light oil and importing Maduro's heavy oil just to keep our gas stations running. Now that the supply of heavy crude is being weaponized, our refineries are struggling to adapt. Rebuilding this infrastructure would take a decade and trillions of dollars, money that the U.S., with its skyrocketing debt, simply does not have. This mismatch is the reason why even if we drill more at home, your prices at the pump remain astronomically high. We are prisoners of a refining system that relies on our geopolitical enemies. The middle class is the primary target of this energy war. In the US, UK, and Canada, the average family spends a significant portion of their income on energy and transportation. When the price of oil doubles, it's not just the car that becomes expensive. It's the heating bill, the grocery bill, and the insurance premium. We are seeing a silent theft of wealth. Your bank balance might stay the same, but its purchasing power is evaporating. By mid-2026, the standard of living that was once considered a birthright in the West is becoming a luxury. This transition is being branded as sustainability, but for the millions of people struggling to choose between fuel and food, it feels much more like a controlled economic demolition, designed to consolidate power in fewer hands. In past crises, the U.S. government could stabilize prices by tapping into the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. It was our national insurance policy. However, after years of using the SPR for political optics during election cycles, the tanks are nearly empty. As of early 2026, we have no buffer left. We are flying a plane with no fuel reserve and no landing gear. When a supply shock happens now, whether it's a protest in Caracas or a blockade in the Middle East, there's nothing to stop the price from hitting $20. The vulnerability of the Western world has never been more exposed. We have traded our long-term national security for short-term political gain, and now the bill is coming due with interest that we cannot possibly pay back. The expansion of the BRICS Plus alliance has changed the game forever. With Saudi Arabia, Iran, the UAE, and now several South American nations joining forces, the Global South now controls over 80% of the world's oil production. They are no longer competing with each other to please the U.S. State Department. Instead, they are coordinating their production to ensure that the wealth stays within their own borders. In 2026, the dollar is no longer the only game in town. The rise of a multipolar currency system means that the U.S. can no longer print money to buy its way out of trouble. When Maduro stands next to Chinese leaders and smiles, he is signaling to the world that the era of Western hegemony is over and the era of resource-based power has begun. Have you noticed how the news never gives you a straight answer on confirmed pricing anymore? This is a form of psychological conditioning. By keeping the prices volatile and unconfirmed, the authorities prevent the public from organizing a coherent response. If you don't know what the price will be tomorrow, you can't plan, you can't protest, and you can't adapt. You are kept in a constant state of low-level anxiety, which makes you more compliant. This pricing fog is a deliberate strategy to mask the fact that the dollar is losing its value. They want you to blame the gas station owner, or the greedy corporations, or even Maduro himself, as long as you don't look at the Federal Reserve and the systemic failure of the fiat currency system. Trump's rhetoric about energy independence resonates because it touches on a fundamental truth. A nation that cannot fuel itself is not sovereign. However, the reality is that the independence he speaks of was always a temporary illusion provided by the shale boom. Shale oil wells deplete quickly, and the easy oil is already gone. Even with Trump's drill, baby, drill mentality, the geological reality of 2026 is that the world's remaining massive oil reserves are in the hands of people who don't like us. We are at the mercy of geology and geography. Trump's anger is the anger of a leader realizing that the tools of the past no longer work in a world where the enemies have united and the resources have been depleted by decades of overconsumption. Nicolas Maduro's smug smile in recent photos isn't just for show. He has successfully navigated the most complex geopolitical trap in modern history. By inviting China to develop his oil fields and Russia to provide security, he has made himself untouchable. If the U.S. tries to invade Venezuela to seize the oil, they would be starting a direct conflict with two nuclear powers. Maduro has effectively turned his country into a fortress of resources. He knows that every day the oil stays in the ground or goes to China, the pressure on the U.S. economy increases. He is playing a game of attrition, waiting for the U.S. dollar to collapse under its own weight, before he even considers opening the taps for the Western markets on his own terms. The connection between silver and oil is the missing link in most economic analyses. It takes a massive amount of energy to mine and refine precious metals. As oil prices hit record highs, the cost of producing silver and gold also skyrockets. This creates a floor under the price of hard assets. In 2026, we are seeing a mass exodus from digital bank credits into physical assets. People are realizing that you can't eat a bank statement and you can't fuel a car with a digital dollar. The rush into silver is a direct reaction to the energy crisis. As the dollar's backing oil disappears, the world is returning to the only currency that has stood the test of 5,000 years of human history: physical, tangible metal that cannot be printed. While the U.S. is the center of this storm, its closest allies, the UK and Canada, are suffering even more. The UK's energy grid is in a state of permanent crisis, with household energy bills reaching levels that were unthinkable just 3 years ago. Canada, despite being an oil producer, is trapped by its own internal politics and a lack of refining capacity, forcing its citizens to pay premium prices for the very resource they sit on. The special relationship between these nations is being tested as each country scrambles to secure its own energy future. We are seeing a breakdown of the Western alliance as nations realize that in a world of scarcity, there are no friends, only competitors for the last few drops of affordable fuel. It is easy to point the finger at oil companies making record profits, and while their greed is undeniable, it is also a symptom of the endgame. These corporations are not investing in new exploration because they know the era of oil is being forcibly ended by both geological limits and political mandates. They are harvesting whatever profit is left before the system resets. They are not the cause of the collapse. They are the vultures circling the dying body of the global economy. By the time the public realizes that the high prices weren't just corporate greed, but a fundamental lack of available, affordable energy, it will be too late. The infrastructure will be gone, the reserves will be empty, and the dollar will be a memory. If you look at a map of global oil flows today, you will see a massive shift toward the east. The new Silk Road is paved with oil and gas pipelines that bypass the Western world entirely. In 2026, the U.S. Navy, which for a century ensured the safety of the global sea lanes, find it increasingly difficult to project power in the face of hypersonic missiles and drone swarms. The age of the carrier is being replaced by the age of the resource. If the U.S. cannot guarantee the safe passage of oil tankers, it cannot guarantee the value of its currency. This is the ultimate checkmate move by the China-Russia-Venezuela axis. They don't need to win a war with bullets. They just need to win a war of logistics and energy. What does this mean for you, the viewer? It means that the life you lived in 2019 is never coming back. We are entering a period of economic localization. You will have to rethink everything: where you live, how you work, and what you value. The successful people in this new era will be those who diversify their assets into hard resources, reduce their dependence on the centralized grid, and educate themselves on the forensics of the economy. The unconfirmed prices at the pump are a signal to start preparing, whether it is through community resilience, energy independence, or financial hedging. The time to act is now, while there is still a window of opportunity before the final collapse of the petrodollar system becomes official. As we look at the smiling face of Maduro and the angry face of Trump, we must realize that they are both players in a script that was written long ago. The limits to growth are real, and the debt-based financial system was always a pyramid scheme that required infinite energy to survive. In 2026, the energy has run out, and the scheme is failing. The $15 gas trap is just the beginning of a much larger adjustment. The death of cheap oil is not just a catchy title. It is a historical fact that will define the lives of our children and grandchildren. The world is being reordered, and the Western world is currently on the losing side of that ledger. The truth is harsh, but it is necessary for survival. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the crumbling foundations of our global economy. If you found this analysis valuable, it is because you are someone who prefers the difficult truth over the comfortable lie. We will continue to track the unconfirmed prices, the shadow deals in Caracas, and the collapse of the US dollar as it happens. The era of errors is ending, and the era of new fortunes, for those who are prepared, is just beginning. Stay informed, keep your eyes on the resources, and don't let the mainstream narrative distract you from the reality of the pump. This is a story of power, a story of oil, and ultimately a story of the end of an empire. We will see you in the next investigation.